get everyone up here so I can see. Okay, so in this workshop, we're going to talk a little bit about embedding questions in videos. First, we'll start by talking a little bit about why you might, and then I'll go through one example of how to do this. Okay, so basically, I don't know why it's in this mode. I want it to be in full screen. That's a little bit better. So, one question is, if you ask students to do some readings or watch a video before class, do all of your students do that? Well, I know when I was a student, I didn't always do this. So that's one reason why you might want to, perhaps, if you're going to share videos with students, maybe embed some questions in them, especially if it's graded. It's a great incentive just to get people to watch them. And I know if I'm watching a video and I'm distracted by other things, it's really easy for attention to waver. So, I know we have Panopto recordings and so forth where you can just post videos or short lectures and you can see who watched them. But there's all sorts of levels of focus that people might have when they're engaged in watching a video. I know there have been times when I've been watching a video and it just sort of was there in the back of my mind, but I could go minutes without paying any attention to the video I was watching if I'm thinking about other things or distracted. Embedding some questions in it is a really good way of getting attention back. And I don't know why that's not full screen. In any case, another point is if you have a video that's going through something fairly elaborate, there may be some initial concepts that you talk about early that people, if they don't understand it, the rest of the video may not make much sense. So by putting some questions in a video, it could serve as a little concept check before people move on to the rest of it. And I've created videos and used them in support of most of my classes going back to the late 1990s or the mid 1990s. Some of them were pretty bad back then, and many of them still are. But I've noticed that they tended to get a fair amount of use, but the people who use them generally were the students who were doing the best in the class, who were just trying to clarify a few things and who just wanted to make sure they didn't get stuck with an A- or a B+. The people who most needed the videos or who most would benefit from having review materials that they could watch to help review materials or test your understanding were often the least likely to watch those videos. So I just want to talk about and give you an overview of 4 ways of doing this, and then go over one example in a little bit more detail. The 4 most popular tools from my own investigations of this, and I've only started embedding questions in videos really last semester. I had experimented with it a little bit before. One is EdPuzzle. Another is PlayPosit. Panopto is one that at Oswego we all have access to with a site license. And another is TED-Ed. And let's talk just a little bit about what each of them do in terms of how they work and what sort of questions they allow, and also what sort of cost there is associated with them. EdPuzzle has 2 plans effectively for faculty. They have institutional plans, but a free plan is a great way to experiment with this, and it may be all that you need. That a free plan gives you storage for 20 videos. And if you start referring other people to the site, if you get a code that you give them and they sign up for the site based on your referral, you get more storage. I haven't experimented with that aspect of it, but 20 videos might very well be enough for a semester of your class. You could always delete the questions that you have, those things you created in EdPuzzle. You still have the original videos stored somewhere, and then you could just add a different 20 videos if you're using another class a different semester, for example. If you want to pay for it, it's $11.50 a month, and that gives you unlimited storage and detailed analytics. And in either case, though, you're able to see what videos your students watch. They sign up as a class, they join it, you can access data on what videos they watched, how well they did, and answering questions, and you can upload grades from that and into your grade book and so forth. And I'm pretty sure you can download it as a CSV file or something, or a CSV or Excel file. The question types that are allowed in EdPuzzle right now are a multiple choice where you only have one correct answer, open-ended, where you have essentially free response type questions where people can post a few sentences in response to some type of prompt, and notes where students can watch a video and make notes to themselves that they can go back and review later, or that you can see. PlayPosit is the one I actually selected. It has a free version, which is pretty limited unless you have an extremely small class. What's different about their plan, their free plan, is it doesn't limit the number of videos. You could post 100 videos, but you can only have 100 learner attempts at those videos, which means you could have 100 videos and one student watch each of them. You could have one video with up to 100 views of that. And often students will go back and watch these videos over and over again, which again makes this plan not really that useful unless you just want to try creating a couple and you have a fairly small class, and then you can post it. Or again, you could have one video at a time, move it out and create a new one, and then you could have 100 attempts on any one video that's active at a time. What I chose to get, and again, I hate to recommend things that may have a cost, but you might be able to persuade your department to pick up the cost if you want to do it. For $144 annually, you can have unlimited attempts, any number of videos, and I've got a lot. I don't remember quite how many. I've used it in 2 classes so far. And an interesting feature with the paid plan is you can create a short video that's 2 or 3 seconds long, and you could embed those videos in, say, a PowerPoint or Prezi or Google Slideshow or in Beamer, whatever you're using to present. And essentially, you can broadcast those out to student devices. You share a code, a short URL essentially, or short code that students will then plug into their version of the PlayPosit app or directly in a web browser, and it will display that video broadcast, which might be just a video containing a multiple choice question or a free response question or a poll. And so from the student perspective, it will look and act as a type of essentially a polling service or like a clicker type software. And this has no cost to the students. The only cost is the cost of the person that's creating the videos. And that's an option I haven't yet tried because I was using other polling software, but it is something I'm considering for the future because, again, it is free from the student perspective. This offers the most question types of anything I've seen. There's multiple choice, again, with one correct answer. There's free response questions where you can have them gradable by putting in a variety of specific phrases that you can do pattern matching on. You can do polls that aren't graded. You can do multiple select where you have any number of possible answers, and the score is based on whether you select or not select the ones that should be or should not be selected appropriately. Fill in the blank, again, with pattern matching, where you can do exact matches or search for keywords and, using essentially plain text search of what's submitted. There's also the ability to embed discussion forums right in a video. So you can have students watch a part of a video and then have them do a discussion right in the video where it's a threaded discussion where they can respond to each other. There's vocabulary matching questions where you have to match words to definitions and such things. And there's also the ability to embed websites right in the document if you want, in the video, if you want students to go out and look at something. And one of the things that I really love about this, because one of the classes I was using this for is econometrics, and in there's an awful lot of mathematical symbols and math equations and Greek letters and so forth, and you can directly input LaTeX. So, if you're familiar with LaTeX, it gives you a really nice way of getting more complicated equations up on the screen. Okay. And none of the other programs that I've seen had that ability. You could always embed images that would have equations and so forth, but this is a little bit more accessible, among other things. Now, Panopto is something that at Oswego is free because we have a site license for it, for recording videos and so forth. It allows right now 2 question types, multiple choice or multiple select. And the only real advantage I see for Panopto over the other alternatives is that it has LTI integration with a Blackboard gradebook. However, there's only one gradebook column there's one gradebook column per question, which means if you wanted to embed 4 or 5 or 6 questions, it would show up as 6 particular gradebook entries in your Blackboard gradebook, which can really fill up a gradebook really quickly. And it also becomes a little bit harder for students to interpret that, just because, if you have, say, 20 or 30 videos with 3 or 4 questions in each, they're just going to see a set of 60, 80, 100 or more separate columns appended to the end of the Blackboard, or wherever you choose to put them in the Blackboard gradebook. And I suppose you could hide them, but it's going to clutter things up a lot. And it's not quite as easy for students to go back and see how they did. One other alternative, which I haven't explored quite as much, is TED-Ed. And that's put on by the people who do the TED Talks things and so forth. It's a nonprofit. Much of it is funded by it was funded by the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. I see Melinda Gates is still on the board. Bill seems to have disappeared. It allows 2 types of questions. It works only with YouTube, I should note. So the videos have to be on YouTube. And the question types that it allows are only multiple choice or open-ended. But they also have created a lot of videos, or many people have created videos that are shared on the platform that you could choose to adopt. So there are some things that are created there, and they also have hired some professional animators. Sal Khan is on the board and so forth. And it's a pretty active platform. It's used more in middle school and elementary school, partly because a lot of the animations that have been created on there tend to be cartoon type things. And, they're not quite as popular with college students. For me, the main limitations here was the limited question types, but it's a free option. It's not bad. I know Damien has used this in some of his classes at Oswego, and he could provide a bit more information. He used it several years ago. I'm not sure if he's using it currently, but it only worked with YouTube, with videos that are stored on YouTube. And basically you take videos, you can truncate them, take excerpts from them, and embed questions in them that are multiple choice or open-ended. And you can create a course, and you can either share the videos you've created, the mashup type videos you've created, either publicly or only with students in your class. And so that's not a bad strategy if you want to, if you're willing to work with just multiple choice and open-ended questions. I'm not sure what grading capabilities they have in there, but you can certainly see the responses that students have selected. I apologize for not doing a little more research on that. But so that's the basic overview. And what I'd like to do, though, is take you through an example of the platform that I'm most familiar with, so I won't mess up very much. But all of them are going, well, EdPuzzle and PlayPosit are going to work in a very similar way. Panopto works in a similar way too. It just has somewhat more limited features. So before I do that, does anyone have any questions or comments or concerns? And I see Janet asked, can videos be stored by the person who made the video even after you've stopped using one of those programs? Yes and no. The videos are generally stored somewhere on some video hosting service, and then they're pulled into these platforms, and new instances of the video are created with your questions embedded. So the videos would still be on the original hosting site, but if you want to share videos with your students, I believe for at least for PlayPosit, you would need to have you would need to maintain an account if you were going to have more than 100 views. So I think all these sites would allow you to keep the videos there, but there may be limitations. Well, with EdPuzzle, if you don't have a paid account, or if you stop using a paid account, you would be limited in terms of the number of videos you'd be able to keep. So you'd have to select which ones remain on the platform. With PlayPosit, the videos would all stay there, but what would happen is you would be limited in terms of the number of people who'd be allowed to view them. After 100 views in a month, no one else would be able to access the videos. And you can store videos on YouTube, but YouTube no longer has the capability of embedding questions in it. So you'd be keeping the original videos in there, and you might have text for questions there, but you wouldn't have interactive questions. There was a time up until about 5 years ago, and this is where I first started experimenting with this, where YouTube actually had the ability to embed questions in, but then they removed that capability. So that is no longer available through YouTube. But there are these other platforms, and many, many people are using them. So the question, do the video questions embeddings require cloud storage, computer storage, or can it use both? All the videos are stored somewhere in the cloud, depending on the platform. So when you have the video questions, they're actually stored in the cloud provided by the hosting provider. So either Panopto or PlayPosit or EdPuzzle or TED-Ed, the questions are actually embedded in storage space that they provide. So the actual computer storage, there is no requirement of storage on your computer other than whatever the program happens to be using while you're editing the videos. Well, and even that is done with an interface where it's just whatever buffer is being used on your computer. Any other questions? You can unmute your mics too. We've got a small enough group here. Okay, well, I'm going to go over then to the PlayPosit website, which is the one I've been using most often. And I already logged into this. And these are some of the videos I created. It will, I don't want that menu up. There we go. And there I put something else up. So I can choose a filter to look for certain terms or whatever, but I'm going to cancel that and just show you, the variety of things here. And this shows you the number of views I've had. These were all videos that I created either during the fall semester of 2020 or the spring semester of 2021. Now, the videos involving microeconomics topics was in a class with 289 students. And you can see most of the videos there have a number of views of between 600 and 900 views. And that's because I've generally set them up so that students often go back and watch them multiple times, either to review or just to improve their scores. And the way I've chosen to, and I set them up so that students have an unlimited number of times to view the videos and to attempt the questions, but they have to have them done by a certain date. One of the limitations of EdPuzzle or PlayPosit is because we do not have a campus license for this, something I tried to get a couple of years ago, but because we don't have a campus license for this, all the grades are stored in the cloud, and you have to download them essentially as a spreadsheet file, as a CSV file, and then you have to upload it into Blackboard if you want to post grades. And because I have dozens and perhaps hundreds of videos for some of these, for some of my classes, I do them a week at a time, and I give them a deadline that's usually a week or so after that module ends in the class, and then I upload the scores. And then whatever the grade was as of that point is set, but they can still go back and access any of those videos for review. It just won't change your grade because there's no direct connection between the gradebook and here. And the way you would create this in this, and this is pretty similar in all those, is you would, in PlayPosit, they call it a new bulb. They call the videos with questions embedded bulbs. I'm not entirely sure why. They have this metaphor of the light coming on and having this, enlightened student. And I'm just going to show you how you would read something in, and they all work in basically this way. You would input a video, and here you have a variety of options. You could take videos that you have already stored there. You could take a URL for video that's anywhere on the web, as long as it's a streaming video. You could upload a video directly from your account. You could upload just an MP3 file if you just want to do it in audio, or you could do a screencast video directly on your computer. So if you wanted to, you could do a record, and you could either do a voiceover of a slideshow, or you could just record a short narration and embed some questions in it if you want. Or you could search on YouTube for a video. And if you have a YouTube video, or if it's on any of the major services, you could just put the URL in there and it would connect. Now, if we had this embedded on the campus, which we don't, you'd have access to a wider set. For example, it would directly import Panopto videos, Kaltura videos, Zoom videos. They set up the integration so any videos in your account would automatically be accessible on any of the accounts that the college had access to, would be accessible. But you don't really need that, as long as you can go to the video and get the URL, and as long as it's publicly visible, it basically just sucks it in. It takes just a few seconds to load the video, and then I'm not going to do that just to avoid the time it takes to do that. I'm going to go back instead to one of the videos. Oh, is it going to let me do this? It's not going to let me go back, or will it? Yes, okay, I'm going to go back out. No, it created a new instance. Never mind. I'm going to just take a video. One of the videos I created, let's say I'll take the regulation of a natural monopoly. This is already created. And let me just show you some of the, tell you what some of these options are. Here you can change the settings if you want to change the number of attempts that people have. If you want to preview it so you can see what it would look like from a student's perspective. If you want to assign it to a new class, you create a class in here, you assign students to it and so forth. If you have if you know other people who have accounts on this and you want to collaborate, you can share that. You can let multiple faculty members or students collaborate on creating videos, but each person would need their own account. You can create folders and group them by that. Or if you have created this as something where you have really short questions, you can broadcast it, you get the URL and post it in your presentation. You could monitor the stats on it. I'm not going to do that because we're posting the video publicly, but it will show you how many times people watch the video, how they did on all the tests, and all the other things. This gives you more details on it. It will give you gives you analytics on it, the length of it, and the dimensions of it, and so forth. I'm not, to be honest, I haven't used the export analytics, but what I'm going to do here is just copy this, and I'm going to create a new video just for the purpose of this to show you how you do that. And I'm going to say, copy and edit, but let's look at the event. Well, okay, we're going to copy the entire bulb, including the interactions. So I'm going to click copy and edit, and that's going to make in a copy of one of the videos I created last semester for my students, and we're going to see how you can edit it. It's just giving you some reminders while it's loading it in. You can add jumps to multiple choice or poll interactions to create a personalized learning experience. What that means in practice is you could create a video where you ask a question and then you have a different video sections depending on how they answered. So you could use this type of thing to create a choose your own adventure video where students are given a problem. If they answer it correctly, they could jump over a big chunk of material to the next set of content, for example. And you have that option of redirecting students to anywhere in the video if you want, and it's still loading. So you could have interactions pause the video or appear when the video continues to play and so forth. And by default, there's certain numbers of questions to each type of question. If you just have a discussion, web embed, or poll, those are not graded items. So you just, by default, there's 0 points. Multiple choice, fill in the blank, and the select, essentially the checkbox option where you have multiple answers are worth by default 1 point each. Free response questions where there's generally a little bit more analysis or we have to do some computations by default are worth 3 points, but you can change them however you want. either by default and so forth. You can also put hotspots on the hotspots on the video so that people can use it to jump to different places in the menu. You can embed a table of contents. You can adjust the playback speed, which I use a lot when I'm creating the videos. If I spend a lot of time creating the videos, I know where I want the next question. I can watch it at 2 times the speed and then slow down to maybe a quarter of the time of speed. So I can find a point in the video where there's a gap in the audio fairly precisely. So I'm not chopping off in the middle of a word when a question pops up. That actually takes more time than I realized when I first started doing this. So I tried to pause more at places where I'm likely to be adding questions. And it's still loading. You can chain multiple interactions together and so forth. And so you can have a block of questions that are all related. Oh, it loaded. It was just spinning there as whatever. So here, I already have some questions in here. And because this was a class with hundreds of students, I have some questions that were free response. But one thing I've discovered with free response questions is that when you have free response questions, if the numbers are measured in units or in percentages, there are so many possible ways that students can think of writing things. And sometimes if you're just asking for a number like 3.4% or something like that, they might write a sentence or sometimes even a paragraph for just that one solution. And so in a large class, I tended to rely more on multiple choice or multiple select. In smaller classes and in classes where there's more quantitative work, I have more fill in the blank type questions. And you can always go back, and if someone writes something in a way you didn't expect in terms of how they wrote exponential notation, or if they use some words instead of what you asked them to write, you can go back and add in more correct answers to have the rest of them automatically graded correctly. So what happens here in the timeline is it looks like this one I got kind of lazy and I only put the interactions right at the end. But what happens here is, I should be seeing the video here and I have no idea why I'm not. Let me just see. For some reason, the video is not playing. It may have something to do with Zoom taking over the screen. They may be using some of the screen display. So that's not going to work too well. Although I did see the beginning of it, didn't we? Oh, this worked fine when I was testing it before, not with a specific video, but well, here's the overall video. I'm going to go to the preview mode and see if that will at least display. You're not going to hear the audio because when I shared the screen, I didn't share the audio. But what will happen is if I go, I have captions in, and so there's a whole bunch of things the students would learn in here, and then they get to the end and they can turn the captions on and off because it's kind of ugly there because it's covering part of the screen, which was my own design fault by not leaving space. But they get to the questions and then they get to choose which answer is correct. And so the firm would experience an economic loss. And they click on it, they get back an answer saying it's correct or incorrect, and then it will go on to the next question. And in this case, this was a fairly short video of 2 minutes and 37 seconds. So I put all the questions at the end. But if I wanted to put a question somewhere else, let me see if now I can get the view back. Okay, well, in any case, let's imagine you were actually seeing what was on the screen here. And I'm going to go to interactions. I'm going to click add an interaction. And these are the options I have. So if I want to go in and add in let's say I want to add in a multiple choice question, it gives you this little editor. And, you notice there's some nice little options here. You could choose to do it with a video embedded in the video. So you could embed a video question in your video where it'll record you, or you could upload a video that will play in the video with the question embedded. So you can get some recursion there. You could just record an audio question, for example, you could upload an image as part of the question, and you can insert an equation, and it gives you, again, a fairly nice little LaTeX editor. So for those of you who are familiar with LaTeX, you could say, beta sub 0 plus, beta 1 x equals y, for example. And it gives you I messed up with that. I meant to put a subscript. Well, so if you mess up, it displays it so you can see it, and then it should, and I messed up still further. Okay, there. So now is that, and I had an extra character in there. There we go. So there, I had the beta 0 plus beta 1x equals y. And again, you've got a full editor up here if you don't remember the LaTeX code, or if you start messing up like I do. You've got, the usual drop downs and things. And well, let's just say, what is the correct answer? You type in your question, you type in your responses, and this is correct. And yeah, I'm just doing this because I'm not being very creative today. So you can add as many options as you want. You could have a dozen or more, and it will scroll through them at that point. I'm just going to choose the correct answer as the correct answer. And then in here, you can add feedback, or this is where you can add the jump capabilities. So if, for example, if they picked a correct answer, you could have it jump over the next 2 minutes of the video going somewhere else. Or you could give them some feedback about why that answer was correct or why that answer was incorrect. And you have more options. These are the default ones that I use. That interaction is required, so they can't just skip over the question before moving on. They have to provide an answer. The interaction will pause the video playback, so they're not having more information streaming in while they're trying to come up with an answer. And what I choose here normally is that learners can rewind after they get to this point. So if students get to a question that they don't understand, they have the option of going back to earlier parts of the videos where they've already completed any questions and going back and re-listening to it to clarify any understanding before they attempt to answer that. You could give them, alternatively, and many people do this, the option of allowing more than one attempt. Now, I often will randomize the answer order, but it depends on the type of question, so that's not on by default. And you can just keep adding new options here, as you go through. And if you messed up and you found it was in the middle of a word or someplace where you didn't want it, you can go in and edit the interaction. And one of the tools you have there is the ability to change the timing of that. So because this was a group, this happens to be in a group of them, I'm going to go in and you can choose the time down to hundredths of a second. So I might want to move, if I'm just cutting off by a little bit, I might make it to 0.12, for example. And then that's where the interaction begins and ends. And that would move that whole group up by 0.12 seconds, and so forth. And when you have a series of them, it goes right after. And if you want to add another question in a cluster, you just click add another interaction to the group, and you can, again, choose a type and do whatever you like with it. So, so that's how you embed questions. And again, EdPuzzle is fairly similar. It just doesn't have quite as many options, but it does have the advantage of being free, and so on. And what else? Well, I've talked a lot. What questions do you have? Anyone? Oh, okay. If students get multiple attempts to answer, and if so, does the gradebook keep the highest grade? Unfortunately, it only allows either the options for that are limited. And what happens there is, I'm trying to remember where it's set. Basically, you can keep either the average score, the first attempt, or the last attempt. So it doesn't, oh, I'm sorry. If for a given question, if you choose the option of letting them answer multiple times, that's a good question. I misinterpreted your question. So let's take a look at that. Let's just try changing that to see. So if we go down to advanced and change it to allow more than one attempt, you can choose the number of attempts. It could be anywhere from 2 to infinite, well, 2 to 10 or infinite to allow any number of attempts. And there's a customize option. Let's see. No, that doesn't really do it. That's something I'd have to look up because I haven't done that. What I have the overall system set up is that it will only store the last attempt because I want to allow students to try it and to come back and do it again. Ideally, my preference would be to allow them to keep the highest grade and let them do it an unlimited number of times over the semester. But the problem with that is because I'm manually uploading the grades, I don't want to upload the grades for all of them all the time because there's one column for each one of the videos. And in a typical week, I'd have anywhere from 3 to 7 short videos, generally from 2 to 7 minutes in a classroom that was flipped, for example, last semester, or well, either in the spring or fall of this past academic year. So I didn't want to have to upload, say, 100 videos at the end of the semester and have them all aligned to gradebook columns. So what I do is I just download the video. I download the columns for that week. Actually, I download the whole thing, but I create an average for that week, which is a weighted average based on the videos for that week, and then upload it. And then that's the score in the gradebook for that week. And I give them a cushion of time, but then I tell them if they want to use it for review, they can. But a short answer is no, the gradebook won't keep the highest grade. It will keep either the first attempt or the most recent, possibly the average, but my recollection is it's either the option of the first attempt or the last attempt on a set of videos or a set of questions in a specific video.
So John, they could just keep taking the quiz over, keep track of their own grades and keep taking that quiz over and over until they got a higher grade?
They could. And in my class, this is all worth, I think, 10% of their grade. And if they want to watch a video 10 or 12 times to try to get the highest possible score, I think they're likely to have learned something from that experience. And, if that gives them, most students will do, many of these questions are pretty basic questions, but it's just giving them some foundational concepts. So when they come to class, I can work with them on higher level questions that involve more application, more evaluation, and more cases where they're trying to take the basic concepts and apply them in new situations. Most of the questions here are pretty straightforward. Well, then one other thing I'm going to show is, let's suppose we finish this video, we've added the questions, and I'm going to save and edit it. And now, once you created this video, it becomes part of your whole new set of videos here. It goes right to the top. And this is the one I've just created. Apparently, I created one before when I was experimenting. And there's only one view, which is my own. And now I have these options. So one of the things I could do here is I could choose to assign this. And then this will go into one of the classes I've created. And well, here's one. Here's this is going to have some crappy questions in it, but we'll select a date for this, which is a due date, which isn't binding in any way. But now I have the ability to go in, get the assigned to the class. I chose that one. Okay, and now I have a link. And this is where I get the actual video that gets embedded in Blackboard. You have options. By default, it's just a URL, but you could set it up with, for example, an embed code. So it will show up in the LMS as a video they can click on and play and interact with. They never have to leave Blackboard or whatever LMS you're working with to work on. And that's how I've actually done it. I have one page for each module, which just has all of the PlayPosit videos for that week's material. And I usually do a small embed code just because some weeks I have more. But you can set it up so that there's no login. And actually, there's going to be some garbage in this thing, but let me do it this way. I'm not going to require the learner name, and I'm going to get the assign link. Oh, no, I don't want to do that. I don't want the embed code. I'm just going to copy this, and I'm going to put this in chat. So you'll see what it looks like. And I hope this was a decent video. Some of them were done really late at night, but if you click on that, you should be able to see it as if you're a student, except a student would generally have an account and would log in with that account, which they create the first time. When you set up the class, you can upload the roster from Blackboard to it, and then it will send invitations to all the students so that they're associated with the right class. And from then on, they just log in with their credentials. And once they've done it, they can save that on the computer and they're set for the semester. So if you click that, I don't know if I can see it. Let me see if I can. Okay, I guess you do have to attempt it, but you can make up a name. So I'm going to make up a random name here. And then now, yeah, that's me. It's okay. Okay, so now I'm going to just show it. I'm going to turn off those captions. And I'll go up to somewhere in here, there's now that question that I saved. Oh, it's going to make me play it, isn't it? Yeah, I don't allow them to skip over parts. I'm sorry. You can do that if you want, but I thought it was better to actually make the students watch the things. So, so then once they watch it all, they get to the end and they'll get the score, and then they have the option of going back and redoing it. So they can always go backwards in the video, but they just can't jump forward. They're limited. That's an option you can set, but that's how I set it because, I put a lot of time creating these things. I want them to actually use them. So, so that's it. Any questions? I've worked with this quite a bit, so I'm more familiar with this platform. I've toyed with each of the others, but I haven't actually used them in class.
When they do an attempt, where do the grades for the attempt go? Okay,
they all end up in a master file. I'm not going to load a specific class, but let me show you. Let me see. I think I've got, well, I can use it from here. No, that's the designer. Here we go. If I go over here, this shows you everything arranged by the videos you created, by any folders you've created, or by classes. So here's what I don't want to load my actual classes because it will have, for each group, you will have a grade book, which will show all the students' grades on all of the videos they've watched. It will give you a list of the learners with some general statistics on your students in terms of how much time they spent, how many videos they've watched, how many attempts they've had, and so forth. But I'm going to go to the faculty workshop thing. And I guess I created these when I did a workshop on this last fall, it looks like. And in the grade book, it would show you how people did. Oops. And I can see people would just experiment with this, and we had last name and first name, watch a couple of them. And we have anonymous user, we had Larry Spisman, and we had Mike. Okay, so if you So this is what you'd look at, and you'd be able to see the people's attempts. Now, no one here actually completed it and uploaded or submitted it for grading, but in here you can actually see how the students do, and you'd have one column for each video. So Larry here spent 10.78 minutes watching this video. He actually probably watched the whole thing, and he got 3 out of the 4 questions correct. And he wasn't taking it very seriously. He was an economist who retired. And my co-author on dozens of papers. And he could have answered it correctly if he tried. So that's what happens. And then what you have as an option once you get into the gradebook is you end up having the ability to export the data, and it will export it into a CSV file. And from there, you can just, well, load it into Excel or whatever spreadsheet you're using, and you get your scores there, and you can just fill in the missing scores with zeros, and then create a new column, which is a weighted average for the videos for that module. You know, by the end of the term, I was downloading dozens of a spreadsheet with dozens of columns. I basically just created a new column that was a weighted average of those that week. And then I'd take that, and because the students are entered by email addresses, it would have, say, let's say john.kane@oswego. I just strip off, do a search and replace for the @oswego.edu, delete that, and that becomes the username to upload them into a gradebook column in Blackboard. So I created a gradebook column for that week's videos. I would copy and paste the net IDs of the individuals in one column under the user ID, and I would copy the scores for that week into a column, upload it. And the whole process, actually, even for a class of 289 students, generally took about no more than, well, I'd have to say about 8 minutes, because there were about 3 students out of those 289 who somehow got around the automatic login with their Oswego IDs, and they used Gmail addresses, or they typed in a name instead of using one that had been assigned for their account, and they misspelled the last name or something similar, or they had a typo when they were entering it. So I had to correct generally 2 or 3 errors. That was pretty quick, and now there are ways of editing the gradebook so that wouldn't even be avoided. So the way I have it set up, Janet asked if there are 4 questions, and if a student misses a 4th question, does the student have to watch the entire video again? That's entirely up to you. You could choose to allow students to take each question multiple times, and then it would be only what happened on the last attempt. So in that case, they could just re-answer the last question as many times as they want until they get it correct. But the way I have it set up, the students in that case would get a 75% unless they go back and they watch the video again. And, that may seem punitive, but, that most of them are pretty short. And what I told the students, if they've really only made a mistake on one part, they could let the video play in the background until it gets to the question. They could do something else. They can work on another course, and it will pause when it gets to the first question. They can re-enter the question that they know the answer to. And, there's ways around it, so they don't really have to do it, but it does take a little bit of their time. But that time, they could be watching a YouTube video. They could be chatting with their friends. They could be, browsing through Instagram or doing something else until they get to the question that they had trouble with, and then they could try it again. But you could set it up so they just do it right now. For example, all of the crappy human resource training we had to do in the last couple of weeks here, because we had nothing else to do at the end of this easy semester, allow you to answer the questions as many times as you wanted until you got it correct, which may not be the best way of doing that type of thing. But certainly I wasn't going to object to. I did get 2 of them wrong out of the whole set of like 5 or 6. And you can just go back and answer it again, or at least with some of them, I think. I don't know. But yeah, and in fact, many campuses have done this for their human resource training, where they created their own videos, and it saves them tens of thousands of dollars every year, rather than paying for that service through some other institution that provides them. Other questions? yes, you can link their username from their Blackboard account when they watch or view it. They don't, they have to create, basically they are given a password by default in this program, which is randomly generated, and they have their login is their Oswego email address. And yes, it's certainly possible that other people could log in for them if they share that password with other people. But that's going to be true with pretty much anything that we do online with students. And again, you know, I have typically in the 2 classes I had, I think 80 and 110 videos or something like that. And altogether they were worth 10 to 15% of their grade. So, you know, that's a lot of time that someone would have to spend just to give someone 10% of their grade. They'd have to be a really good friend to do that. You know, so, and that's possible. Or you could pay someone to do it, but that's true for all of our assessments online. You know, so it is a concern. And again, you don't have to provide scores. You don't have to upload the grades. We were talking with on our podcast 2 weeks ago, we had one of our graduates, actually, she was a math major who was a minor in economics, and she's using EdPuzzle in her classes, and she wasn't even embedding the questions. She was just using it to see if students were watching the video and then nudging them if they didn't, because it does provide a record of who viewed the videos. And there, you know, if you were doing something like that, there would really be no incentive for academic dishonesty. There's so many more productive ways, though, of cheating that students use that are much more effective, although generally pretty easy to catch with a bit of work. We had a podcast on that come out today, actually. So. Other questions?
Where's that podcast?
Oh, it's on the T for Teaching podcast. We talked to James, what's his last name? Binghamton, the director of the teaching center there.
No clue.
You probably know him. He's a distinguished teaching professor, and
Oh. Okay, well, anyway.
Oh, well, in any case, we talked a little bit about it.
Thank you. T for teaching.
Yep.
Thank you.
So any other questions on embedding videos?
Yeah, it was great. A lot of material.
Michael, Vanessa?
I'm good, thank you.
Okay, well, thank you. I'll stop the recording. I actually have enjoyed it, except for all the time